I commend this bill to the House.
I recognise the honourable member Ian Lees-Galloway.
In the mirror, Mr. Speaker. Look, the people of New Zealand are used to the National Party putting their own vested interests and their own self-serving interests ahead of the best interests of the New Zealand public. They are used to the National Party putting their own interests ahead of the interests of the people of New Zealand. They've seen it before. They saw it with the exclusive brethren, with their shady backroom dealings with the National Party, not wanting to be transparent about their funding of their own crusade against the Labour government, and the fact that that was an agreed strategy both with Don Brash and with John Key at the time. People remember that happening when the National Party put their interests, and Stephen Joyce, that's right, Mr Goff is right, and Stephen Joyce was involved when the exclusive brethren cosied up to the National Party. So people remember that happening. They remember the Sky City deal where people who had good relationships with people in the cabinet were able to organise a deal that was in the interest of that Australian-owned gambling company, Sky City. They remember the Warner Brothers deal where people who work in the film industry no longer have the same working rights as people who work in other industries in New Zealand because of a cosy relationship between the Warner Brothers and people in the cabinet. They remember all the other deals, and they will remember the day that the National Party passed legislation that did two things. It makes it harder for people to cast their vote, particularly people at the margins of society, and it failed to address the electoral rort that the National Party benefits from. That is the coattailing provisions that allows it to do deals with other political parties that are essentially controlled by the National Party now in order to stitch up additional seats for the coalition that the National Party wants to put together. That's the way this party operates. It doesn't operate in an open, transparent, democratic fashion. It operates in a fashion that is behind closed doors, that is made up of dodgy deals and is done in the interests of the National Party and their mates. And that is always their first priority, put far, far ahead of the interests of New Zealand. And Scott Simpson has repeatedly said to me and to other speakers from this side of the House, tell us about the Electoral Finance Act. Now, look, Labor supported the repeal of the Electoral Finance Act. It wasn't the best piece of legislation. But, listen, no, just be quiet for a second and listen. The values behind the Electoral Finance Act were the values of transparency and democracy and open government. And they came from the deal that the National Party did with the exclusive brethren, with people putting promoter statements on their material with addresses with empty lots on them, where nobody lived, where nobody had their offices, and it was done to hide the money that was funding the National Party, just like the White Matter Trust is used to hide the money that funds the National Party. There is no belief in transparency from that party. There is no belief in democracy from that party. If they believed in democracy, sir, they would follow the recommendations of the MMP review. The MMP review that came out of the promise that the National Party made to New Zealand, that if they voted for MMP, there would be a review and there would be changes made to our MMP system at the margins, particularly things like the coattailing provision and where the party vote threshold is. And New Zealanders spoke out. New Zealanders made it absolutely clear. 71% of New Zealanders want to get rid of the coattailing provisions. The MMP review, a apolitical review, it had no political persuasion whatsoever, recommended to Parliament that we get rid of the coattailing provisions. But that's not in the National Party's interests. That's not what serves the National Party and the wealthy people who fund the National Party behind secret trusts. That's not in their best interests, so they won't do it. Judith Collins, now famous for being just another national minister who does things for her mates and in her best interest, not the public's best interest, blocked the advancing of the recommendations of the MMP review, and that's what this National Party will be remembered for and what it's doing with this bill.
Mojo Mathers.
With a view of